Aloha, welcome board members and manager to the February 27, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Water Supply. I'd like to go over some virtual meeting regulations required by law. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet forum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at their location during roll call. The public is invited to attend our meeting here at the BWS Public Service Building at 630 South Beretania Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96843. You can also attend via interactive conference technology. Masks are optional. Let's take a moment to take a roll call of the board members who are present. When I say your name, please say aye. Vice Chair Capostro.
I'm appearing remotely today from my home office and am alone with the door closed.
Okay. Board member Don Sevchik.
Hi, good afternoon. Don Sevchik present. I'm in my car by myself on my way to the boardroom.
Thank you very much, board member Sevchik. Please drive carefully. The rest of the board members I have in the room with me present here at our BWS service building is our board member Nalihu Anthony, board member Jonathan Kaneshiro, and board member Maxor. Board members who are calling or video conferencing in, and to all remote participants, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you have a question, comment, or wish to enter a motion or second a motion on an action item, please identify yourself before continuing to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the chat feature to send a direct message to our support team. Their names are listed in a message to all participants. To open the chat window, please click or tap the text bubble icon toolbar. Also in the room with us today, we have our manager, Ernest Lau, Deputy Manager, Erwin Kawata, Secretary Joy Cruz Achu, Manager Secretary Kimberly Kuwaye, and Information Specialist Tracy Burgle. Joining us by Zoom are Jeff Lau and Jessica Wong, both from the City and County Corporation Council Department, as well as Information Specialist Wayne Maria. We are taking testimony, or we have been taking testimony through a variety of things.
Board member Edson.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, board member Ed Stephen.
So sorry I'm late.
No worries.
Thank you, Chair.
Good. We were taking a testimony today via written testimony. We were accepting that. You can also testify in person here at 630 South Beretania Street. Please check in with someone in the lobby of our building and we will give you further instructions. I believe you can also testify remotely by phone or video using the Zoom video conferencing platform. Please email your request to board@hbws.org or online at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. All right, materials for this meeting are available at our website, www.boardofwatersupply.com/board-meetings. And this meeting can be viewable via live streaming on our website as well. All right, we have 5 items on our agenda requiring board action. Item number 1 requiring board action is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 12, 2022. May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Kapua.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sproul. Is there any discussion? I hope you've been able to review them previously, or amendments, additions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, say nay.
Abstention on my part, Mr. Chair, I wasn't here.
Thank you. Noted for the record. Thank you very much, Board Member Soar. So we have unanimous vote with the exception of one abstention. And I will say that the motion hereby passes. Motion is accepted.
Mr. Chair, just a question.
Yes.
Chris, maybe this is for staff, but what is the method if we wanted to pull transcripts from that meeting? Is there a way to do it from the Zoom call?
So it is recorded and then I transcribe it because there's a lot of, what do you call, I can send it to you if you want.
Okay, thank you. Okay. You transcribe the whole meeting? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this meeting is being recorded, both audio as well as, I believe, on Olelo and on video as well. All right, before I move on to the next item, is there anyone here to testify downstairs, Madam Secretary?
No, there are no in-person.
Thank you, so noted for the record. All right, item number 2 requiring board action is the approval. Okay, so yeah, the minutes that we approved, the previous motion, were the minutes held on December 12th, 2022. I believe we tabled that action in light of our public hearing that we held, I believe, the last meeting. So now we have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 23rd, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, any second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 23rd, 2023. Members, are there any changes, corrections, or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, hearing none.
Chair, this is Kapua. I'm going to be abstaining. I'm abstaining just because I missed that meeting. Mahalo.
Thank you very much for that. And we have noted that for the record. All right, otherwise, the minutes, the motion is approved, and the minutes of January 23rd, 2023 is accepted or approved. Next on the list here is the adoption of resolution number 960/2023 for the acceptance of a gift to the Board of Water Supply from Hardware Hawaii, also known as HH Holdings Incorporated, for our Detect Leak Week. Chair recognizes Ms. Kathleen Elliott.
Mahalo, Chair, Board Members, Manager. I request that this board adopt resolution number 960/2023, acceptance of a gift to the Board of Water Supply from Hardware Hawaii for Detect a Leak Week. We recommend acceptance of the proposed gift to the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu from Hardware Hawaii of 4 WaterSense that low flush, low flow labeled toilets valued at $786. This supports the BWS's annual Detect a Leak campaign observed from April 16, 2023 through April 22, 2023. The goal of the campaign is to remind customers to detect and repair leaks, emphasizing the importance of replacing older, inefficient toilets with WaterSense labeled models, 1.28 gallons per flush or less. This can reduce water waste by 20 to 60% per year. Unlike earlier generation load flush toilets, WaterSense models combine high efficiency with high performance functioning better than standard toilets in consumer testing. During Detect a Leak Week, the public will have a chance to win one of these 4 WaterSense labeled toilets. This will inspire residents to embrace their role as responsible stewards of our limited yet precious water resources and may help to lower customer water bills. We greatly appreciate the continued participation and commitment of our community partners and customers who support this worthwhile program. Respectfully submitted, and we request your approval of this donation.
All right, thank you very much. Members, is there a motion to approve resolution number 960/2023 to accept this donation?
So moved. Second.
All right, moved and seconded to accept a gift to the Board of Water Supply from Hardware Hawaii for Detect a Leak Week. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those approved say aye.
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 And all those who oppose say nay. Right, motion hereby unanimously passes. Moving on to the next item, we have another gift here, adoption of resolution number 961/2023. This is for acceptance of gifts to the Board of Water Supply from various donors in support of the 2023 Water Conservation Week program. Again, we have Ms. Kathleen Elliott.
Mahalo, Chair. We recommend the adoption of the attached resolution number 961/2023 that accepts proposed gifts to the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu in support of the 2023 Water Conservation Week program. Monetary and in-kind gifts from the donors total to $12,700. Our donations are from as follows: Friends of Halava Xeriscape Garden, $2,000. Sodexo refreshments for the award ceremony, $2,700. Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union, $2,000. Aloha Pacific Federal Credit Union, $2,000. Alexander and Baldwin, $1,000. Hawaii Energy, $1,000. Pasha Hawaii, $1,000. Times Supermarket, $1,000. This well-established education outreach program is in its 44th year of existence. It uses a poster and poetry contest to engage Oahu students in grades kindergarten through 12 and teaches them the value of water. Our goal is to instill in them the need to be water efficient as, together, everyone contributes to a larger island-wide commitment to a sustainable water future. Through this program, the BWS hopes to inspire more island residents to adopt water conservation behavior. Sponsor gifts will help the BWS offset program costs that include the printing of 20,000 copies of the 2024 calendar that will feature the winning entries from the 2023 poster and poetry contests, as well as an award ceremony for place winners and honorable mentions of the 2023 contests. The calendars are distributed to all Oahu schools, elected officials, and the public. We greatly appreciate your support and express your support of this resolution. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to
So
adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded to adopt resolution number 961/2023. Acceptance of gifts from the donors identified by Ms. Kathleen Elliott Pahinui. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you. All those opposed say nay. All right, the motion passes. Resolution number 961/2023 is hereby accepted. Ms. Elliott Pahinui, please express our thanks very much to all of our donors today, Hardware Hawaii, Friends of Halava Xeriscape Garden, Sodexo, Hawaiian Financial, FCU, Aloha Pacific, FCU, Alexander and Baldwin, Hawaii Energy, Pasha Hawaii, and Times Supermarkets. And thank you very much to the department for supporting these programs, Detect the Leak Week as well as our Water Conservation Week to raise awareness in the community. Thank you very much, Manager Lau. Next, we have the adoption of resolution number 962/2023, authorizing up to $25,000 for principal amount of Series 2023 bonds. Chair recognizes Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Chair Andaya, board members, and just to correct then, that is $25 million.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not used to having.
I know, but we recommend the adoption and approval of resolution 962/2023, which authorizes and approves the issuance of Board of Water Supply bonds at one time not to exceed $25 million principal amount of revenue bonds. The purpose of these Series 2023 bonds is to pay for the cost of improvements authorized under the capital budget of the Board of Water Supply, and also to pay the cost of issuance of the Series 2023 bonds. The bonds shall be term bonds on the conditions of the board deems necessary and advisable. Also attached in your board pack are some following documents: the bond purchase contract, the series certificate, and the preliminary official statement, which also includes the form of continuing disclosure. As a aside, I would also like to proudly announce that our rating agencies announced this morning that they have given the Board of Water Supply a AAA rating. This is a stable rating from S&P, which was continued from last year, and an upgrade by Fitch from AA+ to AAA. That helps lower our cost of borrowing on issuing these bonds.
Board Chair, I'd like to, and board members, acknowledge, Joe and his team and the underwriter and the legal bond counsel, everybody's efforts, and also the staff of the Board of Water Supply in supporting us in this effort. Joe, are we one of the few public agencies or in the state that has both AAA ratings?
I believe we are the only agency in the state to have both AAA rating, have two AAA ratings.
So thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions?
No, he answered my question I was going to ask about.
Oh,
That's good. That's good. Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. It's a team effort, really. It's a reflection on the whole board.
Joe, how much did last time we went out for a bond issuance, how many dollars did we ask for last time?
I believe the last bond, I believe last year we asked for 93 million.
Okay, and are we to assume that the smaller amount is a reflection of the market and the interest rates that have done some?
Oh, not really. Actually, several of our projects last year got deferred, that were bond funded, got deferred, and I think that there was a continuing resolution or an amendment presented in August to defer several, I think it was about $49 million in projects that are being transferred to, that are being funded under the current resolution.
But the rates to borrow right now are higher than it was last year.
So the rates to borrow are higher now, and actually to accommodate that, the sizing of the issue wasn't determined by that, but the maturity of the bonds that we will be issuing is influenced by the current rate, since near-term rates are actually higher than long-term rates. The average maturity of the bonds we're contemplating will have a longer maturity than previous issues.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I'd like to call for a motion at this time to adopt resolution number 962/2022.
So moved.
Chair, second. Too late.
Okay,
First, second.
okay, moved by member Anthony, seconded by member Sword. Is there any discussion? Okay, if not, just want to recognize the department again. I've seen my years of service on the board. We've always had a great bond rating, but I've seen it, steadily raise every year. So it's really a testament to.
Quick question, Ernie.
Yes.
Since last year, we kind of kicked the can down the road on projects, and it's, how do you see it for the rest of the year? Is it still gonna be backed up, or we're gonna catch up?
Well, we hope that the projects, the pipeline projects that was delayed from last year, that we couldn't encumber in time, we're gonna be able to do it this year.
Okay,
So we don't anticipate kind of kicking the can down. the road.
yeah, oh, okay, just curious, don't want to have too much of a backlog,
Yeah.
on the projects. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, I think we have unanimous vote on this one. Resolution number 962/2023 is hereby approved.
Chair, if you could note that Don.
Yep.
Board members enter the room.
Yep, thank you very much. Sefcik is now here, present in person, with us. I'd like to move now, but before I do so, I'd like to double check again. Are there any testifiers, either in person or via telephone or otherwise present?
We have one in-person testifier.
Okay,
Item number 1.
item number 1 for information. Okay, well, let's get to that item then. We are now moving into items for information. First, we have the update on the Board of Water Supply's response to the potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contamination. Chair recognizes Ms. Raylene Nakabayashi.
So board members, we're getting more people involved on the Red Hill. So I asked Ray to graciously present the update this month. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and members. So I'll try to be brief. You know a lot of these things, but we've broken down our response to Red Hill into specific problems, their impact, our proposed solutions, and their timeline. So the first problem that we're attacking, right, is that we have lost an average of 10% of our source capacity. Our solution to that is to develop additional capacity in our water system. That starts with the drilling of exploratory wells. This current year, we're drilling, we will be drilling 2 at IAL 497 reservoir site and our Newtown 550 reservoir site. In fiscal year 24, we're doing preliminary feasibility for more additional sites. That also involves looking at our existing system and building water system interconnections where possible to help address this loss of source capacity. In the current fiscal year, we're gonna let out 2 contracts for control valves, which will provide interconnection at both Ka'ahumanu wells and at Manana wells. We continue on our regular CIP, which did include for fiscal year 23 additional source for the system. So there will be construction of exploratory wells at the Eva Shaft location, exploratory wells at Manoa Wells 2, and we're doing condition assessment on some sites that are not currently or not active source, but these are our facilities too. So Waialainui Well, Waimalu Wells 2, and Kaunohi Wells. We're gonna see if those can be brought back online. As you know, we have a lot going on, over $1 billion in CIP planned on our own. So with the crisis that we're having, plus the renovations that we already had scheduled, they're listed for you here, like Waialaiki, Kalihi Pump Station, Punanani Wells, Moanalua Wells, Ka'amilo, and Waialaiki Booster. All of these projects, we're actively trying to complete them, but there are also projects that we must carefully coordinate. Anytime we're doing work on a pump station or source, we have to balance that to ensure there is adequate supply to meet demands. Again, you're aware of this problem, but the extent of the contamination is unknown. So we're unable to quantify, I guess, the threat to our own sources in the vicinity. Our solution, of course, is to develop additional monitoring wells to obtain this information for ourselves. In fiscal year 22, we put out a contract for the drilling of a monitoring well at Site H, or in Halava Valley Access Road. This current year, fiscal year 23, there will be construction contracts let out for 3 more monitoring wells. The sites are listed here: Halava District Park, the Animal Quarantine Facility, and Wanalo Golf Course. And for fiscal year 24, we're currently establishing, I guess, or looking at the feasibility of more monitoring wells. This is a big one. We've received no federal funding to cover everything that I just went over. The exploratory wells, the new source, the monitoring that we have to do, the increased testing. All of these additional activities come on top of, like I mentioned, we have $1 billion in CIP projects that we needed to do already to address our own infrastructure over the next 6 years. So the solution has been to seek alternate sources of funding to alleviate this burden, the burden of all of these efforts on our ratepayers. So far, we've been able to receive federal funding in a few areas. We secured $50.3 million in American Rescue Plan Act state and local fiscal recovery funds. So this is ARPA money from the city. We also secured some grant funding through the state's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which are FEMA entitlement or not entitlement, they're FEMA competitive grants. And also the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities Grant Program, or BRIC, that's another emergency management competitive grant. We are continuing to look at other sources. Joe and I were just in a meeting with DOH this afternoon on the State Revolving Fund Loan Program, the Drinking Water SRF. We're looking very closely at how we can recover costs or look to this program to help recover costs in compliance with another big rule that we've been contending with, the lead and copper rule. We're also looking towards the clean water, so clean water SRF program. And we submitted a letter of interest to apply for a WIFIA, or Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. It's a loan program through the EPA, another low interest loan program that helps water utilities finance their infrastructure. So we did submit a letter of interest and we're invited to apply. So we have a kickoff meeting with EPA next week. So we'll explore that as another means to finance, low interest finance, the things that we need to do. We're also submitting congressionally directed spending requests, or as the old term used to be, earmarks. So we're submitting those to our congressional delegation. There's also House Bill 1511, currently still alive at the state legislature, which would provide $10 million of state of Hawaii grants and aid funding to the Board of Water Supply for exploratory and monitoring wells. So that is our brief update for this month with specific projects and things we're tackling and the timeline on which we're working on these. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have 2 quick ones. One,
You are.
on the monitoring wells, I know we approved 2. Is this one of the 2 sites that we approved last year?
Yes, Site H is part of, we did a budget amendment in fiscal year 22.
Right.
Yep. So Site H is, was from that.
Where was the other site?
We only did one in fiscal year 22.
21.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We had, I guess, goals, or we put the money in to be able to do 2, but we were only ready to do 1. And we have 3 more coming this year.
Okay.
It's timing on when we can cite the feasibility, like where these things will be.
So the second one is you're proposing in the fiscal year 2020.
It's in this year, we have funding to do 3 more monitoring wells. So Site H is going to be constructed probably starting this fiscal year, but we'll award another construction contract for 3 more this year.
And I know the military, they were talking about doing their own monitoring well. Did they
Yeah,
do anything?
they are pursuing, I think, around 22 additional wells.
Yeah.
on-site on the Red Hill property, but also looking now off-site.
Yeah, so,
I think they're encountering some challenges with getting landowner permission to drill
Yeah.
off-site, but that's their plan right now. And we are in discussion with them about locations.
okay, and then, but have they started? Any one, two wells?
Some are actually, I think are under construction.
Okay. At least they're moving on it. Anyway.
Yeah, they're
sitting
moving on it.
Their hands on it. I think.
Yeah. And one thing I heard too, from the admiral in charge of this, that, right now it's 22, but if more wells are needed, that they're open for that discussion.
Okay, my second question real briefly, how are we doing with the congressional discussion? I know we've been talking about it for the last year, but by the way you looked, Ernie, it didn't seem too encouraging there.
Well, no, I appreciate our congressional delegation, and where I think we're getting down to the nitty-gritty details, actually talking staff to staff. So in the meantime, we added some help on Ray's team for a person that'll be focusing on getting these federal funds. And we've kind of broadened the look in discussions, with the congressional delegation and staff.
Yeah.
That we're not only looking for stuff related to Red Hill, but look for any other program that might fit our needs. Because every dollar we can bring in from the federal government is a dollar less from our ratepayers.
Yeah.
So we're kind of broadening our approach.
Okay, yeah, at least it's moving, it's not stagnant in terms of discussion.
Well, one thing, Max, board member Sword, is that we've never really dealt with the congressional, dealing with Congress and that whole federal process. So we're in learning mode right now.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is at least it's moving, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah, we got some really good, sorry, manager, if I may.
Oh, go ahead.
Some really good feedback from Senator Schott's staff. We had some hands-on meetings with them to work through the application process, how we can improve ours, what those kinds of like hearings are like, what the other players are looking at, because they're not single decision makers, right? They bring it to these larger committees. So all of that insight was really helpful. Like we were, I mean, like Ernie said, we don't play at this level normally. We keep our heads down. We do our work here on the island. We don't ask for money at the federal level. So it was actually really insightful he spent a lot of time with us explaining to us the process, where he goes with it after he gets the information from us. We have upcoming meetings with our sister utilities. They've actually were successful, I guess, in prior years, getting some earmark money. So we'll be meeting with them too to figure out, how they navigated this process. This would be our first time. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Oh.
Can you just talk a little bit about, I know we've had multiple discussions just about the loss of, about 15 million gallons a day, and what the perspective is both near term with IAF 497 and Newtown 550 of what you would expect to be able to generate in terms of gallons per day there. And then, in general terms, what are we looking at for the rest of it, assuming that we don't get all 15 million gallons back in these two sites?
Yeah, I'll just say a little bit, and Ray, if you want to jump in, or maybe even Erwin, our deputy manager, also has been very intimately involved. The biggest challenge is Halava Shack was such a large water source for us. People were pumping 10 million gallons a day by itself, maybe even peaking at 15 million gallons a day from that one source. So these wells are not going to produce that kind of water at one location. So we end up with more wells to try to make up even just Halava Shaft. Halava is a smaller source, so it's a little easier to do, almost like a 1-for-1 replacement. But Halava Shaft is going to be one for many wells to replace its capacity. So it's part of the challenge. Ray, you want to add anything?
Yeah, this is just part of the steps I think we're taking to try to make up that huge loss of Halava Shaft. I think one of the reasons our earmark requests weren't successful before is because we threw out the $200 million range of like what it would take for us to develop that many more wells, because we're, like Ernie said, there is no single 1-for-1 replacement on a source like Halava Shaft. It's going to be the loss of Halava Shaft and I don't know, up to 8, 10 new pump stations to just make up for that big of a producer. So yes, you see 2, but that's 2 in a series of, I don't know how many, maybe 8, 10 to just try to get there. The interconnections in our system are another important component of trying to get back to that 15 million. We can continue to look for new source, but we're also looking very closely at how we connect the system better, or not better, but just in ways it hasn't been connected before to move some excess capacity into Metro Honolulu.
Thank you so much.
I have a question as well, and I don't know whether it's better for Ray or for Ernie, but on that note, I wanted to follow up about where things are with Eva Shaft and the exploratory wells there. I know that one of the big challenges is, of course, making up for the huge amount of water we've been able to get from Halava. And I see Eva Shaft as having more potential than other areas, although it's not in the right place necessarily. There's going to be more transportation associated with that. So I was just wondering on the timetable, I know we talked about it before, gosh, maybe about a year ago now. And I know there had been hopes. I know there was a leakage issues and I wasn't sure whether casing was possible, but now that we're seeing exploratory wells, I was just wondering where things are. And I see Barry has popped up. So
magically, Barry says, oh, the Water Resources Division. Barry is working on that project. Barry, can you do an update for Kapua?
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you for your question, Kapua. Yeah, the exploratory wells should be put out to bid this year, FY23 construction funding. So we're getting ready. The bid package is being prepared, and so we should be able to get out. Then 5 wells. We're going to try to put all 5 wells on our property. We'll do some test pumping. We may need to push 1 or 2 wells outside to the east, farther away from the stream, but it's starting. So thank you.
That's super helpful. I was just wondering, Barry, best guesses on capacity from the 5?
The plan now is 2 MGD pumps, so 5 at 2, so it should provide 10 MGD. The yield really got scaled back because the tunnel can put out more, but it is subject to seepage from the stream, so it'll be the quality would be more consistent, and it should be of better quality from the wells. So 10 MGD will still have, we'll take our standby and peaking wells pumps from other sources. But all that operations, figure that out once we do the well drilling and then the yield testing but we're spreading it out farther than other wells, so we should be well within safe, sustainable parameters.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful. I was just trying to remember back to the days of EP 15, 16 and what the yields were, but they were pretty big, and so we'll keep our fingers crossed. Because again, we're just looking at replacing Halava, but I'm concerned about the plume moving, and so what that will mean about us having to replace other source into the future as well. So thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Don?
Yes, I had another question. So have we abandoned treatment opportunities or possibilities?
That's still being examined and studied. Maybe I'll ask Erwin. Can you give us an update where you can on the water treatment study?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the question. So yes, we are doing a water treatment study with respect to removal of TPH or petroleum contamination, as well as other types of contamination. Given that we're not too sure about the amount of contamination present, the study is being designed to handle or remove a very large amount as well as very low amounts of contamination. So that's going to have a tremendous influence in terms of the sizing of the treatment facility. Right now, as it stands right now, it looks like it's going to be a multi-step process involving things like oil-water separation, probably activated carbon, and probably some advanced oxidation treatment in order to handle extremely large amounts of contamination.
In addition, maybe PFAS might be also another component to treat for.
How big of a footprint would that facility be? I'm just curious.
Well, we have some this is gonna be like some very, very preliminary numbers, but we're looking at a facility right now that, it's gonna require probably a size, 3 times the size of Halava Shaft. It's huge. In terms of activated carbon, probably something on the order of 50 contactors. Our current setup right now at one of our facilities has something like 20 contactors, 10 to 20 contactors. We're talking about a facility twice as big.
So would you have to pump the water to a different location, or would you do it on site?
Well, that's the idea. If let's say we could put it at Halava Shaft, so we're talking about treating the water at Halava Shaft.
Yeah, that'd be preferred, right? Obviously.
Yeah, and that's the other part about the study is that we're trying to design it for the existing Halava Shaft, which is about 10 MGD, and be able to do it on demand as well, so that we take away, treating it, holding it, and then putting it back into the water system. So all of those things are really part of the evaluation that we're doing. And the more we look into it and trying to at least pretty much reproduce what we're doing now, the more challenging the study is getting.
So it's gonna be a real cost benefit.
It may not pencil out. In other words, yeah, it might be a situation where treatment is not feasible just from the standpoint of not only operating it, but also maintaining it. Now, in terms of the amount of, let's say, waste material that's generated, it may overwhelm the ability to manage that waste either locally, or it might be something where we have to ship it off island because it's just up to the quantity.
When is that study scheduled to be completed?
Well, as far as the preliminary, we're hoping it by this summer. There's some plans to try to do some very small scale pilot studies next year to try to at least prove out the concepts.
Erwin, I have a follow-up question to that. As part of the studies, are you folks looking at the ick factor? And I'm just thinking of the H. Poco wells on Molokai, on Maui as an example. I mean, there's a lot of research went into, and that's a different kind of contamination, but a lot of research went into the treatment there. And then it was nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to drink it. Everybody thought it was safe, but people didn't want to drink it. And so I'm hoping as a part of the study, we're thinking about public outreach and perception and all of that kind of stuff too. Have you folks thought about that at all?
Yeah, the other part of the study that we're looking at is trying to drive it down to the extremely lowest level, try to get as zero as you can. The limitation there is their ability to measure as well. So we're trying to incorporate into the study where we're trying to extrapolate down to what amount of additional treatment I need to be able to get to that level that even it's beyond my ability to measure, I know at least mathematically and statistically, I'm getting down to zero. So when you add that factor in, now it's going to even increase the size of the treatment facility even more. Because in many cases, the smaller the amount that's present, the more difficult it becomes to remove because there becomes competition between the material itself, its desire to stay in the water, and the water's ability not to let go of it. Right?
Yeah, which also makes it more expensive, right?
Yes.
Challenge.
Is all this kind of empirical analysis and what you guys are doing, is it all in-house? The Board of Water is conducting these studies?
Well, these studies are being done actually within a research laboratory setting. We have a consultant in Pasadena, California working on it. So these are we're simulating actual contamination, putting it through the treatment itself, of course at small scale, and actually measuring out the amounts of removal.
So we're not doing it in-house, it's using.
Yeah, it's not in-house.
Expertise from a consultant and laboratories.
You're just replicating like the contaminant and then.
We're actually taking actual samples water samples from Halava Shaft and then actually synthetically manufacturing the level of contamination, petroleum contamination. We actually have samples of actual pure JP5 fuel that we're actually adding into the water, measuring how much is there and trying to remove that, and starting at different levels from, say, 10% all the way down to some lower concentration.
Wow.
Yeah, we're actually, in terms of the research, it's very limited as to who's actually doing this. So much of what we're doing is actually very groundbreaking. It's not being reproduced anywhere else. So we're learning it on our own because there's no research or literature from which to actually rely on. So we're
Last meeting with the EPA, they said that just TPH in the water wasn't something that they had really any information on or guidance for.
generally speaking, that's true. But as far as the levels that we're trying to remove, but also the quantity of water we're trying to treat.
Right.
You know, trying to treat 10 million gallons is, for the most part, pretty unheard of in one place.
So Erwin, the samples that you said are being shipped to the lab are halava shaft samples, but we don't, and you're adding the jet fuel to it.
Right.
So do we know the level existing in the samples at the moment? No.
At Halal Shaft, the level is non-detect. So we do measure what's in the sample and then what we add, that's correct.
Members, any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Excellent questions, sir.
Thank you.
Board members.
Yeah.
I have a,
Well, one more thing, sorry, Brian, I just wanted to thank Erwin again and Ernie for your folks' work and leadership and, you know, just everything you're doing to try to get us to where we need to go. I know this is all breaking new ground, so it's hard, but I feel like we're in good hands. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Yes, I got that. I have a question. This is regarding the federal grants that we were able to obtain. Are these grants, these are not recurring grants, right? These are, we got this year.
Yep, so the ARPA, the rescue and SLFRF, those were, I guess, some kind of formula funding from the American Rescue and Recovery Act. So the city was given $386 million. We applied that to projects that would fit within the intent of that use of that money and then also fit the timeline. Because that recovery money passed down from the feds was supposed to be spent quickly, like they wanted it out on the street. So we found $50.3 million worth of projects that we could attach to that. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program is a recurring program in the way that that one is calculated when there's a federally declared disaster. So I think ours actually came from lava flows. So there were lava flow disasters on the Big Island. The federal government does some kind of calculation and then they give you competitive grants for hazard mitigation. So we competed against other state and county resources to apply for those. So anytime there is a federal disaster, yes, that is kind of recurring funding. And then the Building Resilient Infrastructure Community, same thing. I believe the feds fund that with some kind of formula based on disasters that you have had in your state.
So if I could just add on the American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds, I just want to acknowledge the mayor for allocating $25.3 million to us and for the council on their own. In FY23's budget, they programmed $25 million for the Board of Water Supply. So just acknowledge both the council members.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hope we can continue.
You had a question.
One other question, sorry, one more. So have, you know, in light of the disaster at Flint, Michigan, have we researched how they were able to fund their emergency to address the issues there? Have we see how they fund stuff, I guess?
I don't think we've gone through a specific, like following in their footsteps kind of.
Yeah.
No, we've been looking for federal funding opportunities that exist for current water utility programs that we can apply for now. I don't want to pretend I know all of the legal stuff, but I don't know if there are any kind of like legal designations for like super funds or making people responsible for the pollution that happened at the federal level that would then entitle you to some money. But as far as we know, that hasn't happened yet. So we're looking at what available avenues there are today. There's drinking water SRF, clean water SRF, low interest finance. So we're just attacking all of those. And then yes, if there is some kind of declaration or like disaster that would entitle Oahu to funding, we'll be the first in line.
Thank you. Okay, and we do have, the ability to manage, because these grants come with, terms and conditions. We have,
Yeah.
we're
we
watching
do.
those.
And also our finance divisions involved in making sure that we are fully compliant with the requirements of the federal funds. They are not easy to manage. They have some important conditions that you have to stay in compliance.
Yep.
And later, I think our auditor is going to talk about our single audit too, and how we're in compliance with the federal requirements for those.
Okay, very good. I believe we have a testifier here today. And I'd like to welcome back Miss Susan Cola Davis.
Did you happen to get my written testimony? I just put a document in there that I could refer to only because I didn't want to inundate our copy maker with the other 20 pages. So what you've got is a March 11th, 2022 letter from the Department of Health to all healthcare providers on the island, and I'll tie this all up. One of the main things that you've been hearing from people that are calling in to this meeting is about the health problems that they were having and the inability to get health treatment. And based on this memo that went out to all the providers, they were reading that available blood and urine testing cannot be done because there's no reliability to indicate that it was due to exposure to JP5, and that they were basically told to get a thorough history and physical. And then I don't want to read through this all because I want to tie it into the other documents. But it is basically saying that we don't have information enough about JP5 in order to say that health conditions are related to the contamination in drinking it. Earlier this month, I shared with Ernie, Kathy, and maybe Erwin got it, a document that Dr. Brewer put out on February 5th based on what he heard at last month's meeting here. So people questioned him afterwards. And once he realized at this meeting that the people that were testifying had no idea of what was in the JP5, he comes out with this. It's a new document. Ernie, have you had a chance to read it?
No, I'm sorry, Susan.
Okay, well, in his document, based on the knowledge that Department of Health and the Navy provided on March 31st in 2022, there's actually a complete list of the general makeup of JP5.
Is that the memo, the email that you got from Roger dated August 11th?
That's one. The other one is the actual changes that he wants made probably to the EALs, but it's an introduction into how he is re-examined based on all the information now, that he is more concerned about how they were looking and interpreting the data that they had. So what he had brought up at the last meeting, and I know you heard me say it, it was about the antifreeze. Okay. So the antifreeze only has a 15-day half-life, but because of its solubility, it pushed through the system first. So people weren't getting, well, they got the fuel in the line, okay? But there were other additives that were getting pushed through to their drinking water starting on November 20th. And they continued drinking it until that shaft was closed. But the results and their conditions and their symptoms and things that they were trying to get treated for basically are now called symptoms of antifreeze poisoning. Okay? So now they have more information so that they can get their health care. And I'm going to leave this with you because I'd like you to be able to take a thorough look at it. But what he found was the CA through CA18 alpha lights increased, which was interesting to him because it went from 68% to 79%. And then the CA greater than CA aromatics went from 9% to 19%. And so his concern was those two increases which had never been identified before.
This is Dr. Brewer.
Yeah. Okay, so people that have been sick have been communicating to him. And I guess he finally realized that their science needed to have a deeper look, okay? And I almost cried on the way here, knowing that all of the contaminants or all the parts of JP5, and you can see there's a list of them here, were known on March 31st and provided to the Department of Health, specifically to Diana Felton, at the request of a civil media request from Dr. Mummy, who is the toxicologist from the Navy. Okay, so when you think about yourselves sitting in a housing, knowing you're getting sick and you don't know what's going on, then finding out you've been drinking it for at least 10 days, not being allowed to be moved. You're stuck there, right? You can't just, well, people started using all of their savings, but you're stuck there drinking it, or people not telling you, gaslighting you. And then these things come out. It affects what we're doing in the Board of Health, the Department of Health's wells and our shafts, because you need to know, Erwin, what you're doing is magnanimous, that if you have all of these things, you can start now not just looking at TPH, D, G, and O. Now you go down and you start deep diving into this. Then you have substances versus what the EPA says are their top 10. And benzene is one of their top 10. So they look for that. And if they see benzene, then that's kind of a red flag. But really, that's not the only thing you should be looking for. And I trust that Erwin knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I think this will help in looking at what they're looking at in California. And my last question, every time I hear that word non-detect, it gives me the willies. When you said in the Halava shaft, it was non-detect, was there a number or was it 0?
There was a number.
Can you tell me the number?
Less than 25.
Okay. But see, that's important to know, okay? Billion, okay? Now, the Department of Health looks at 50, okay? Even though what they say, okay, I've talked to the engineers over there. So their 50 is what is their, I guess.
Detection limit.
Thank you. Their lowest detection limit. Okay, so less than 50. You tell me 25, I still don't feel comfortable. Thank you for listening. I've tried to provide these to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nicola Davis.
Thank you all.
All right. Is there anything further on this item for information? Is there any?
If I could just provide Just a comment, Brian, Mr. Chair, I think, you know, what she brings to us really punctuates, the importance of being, specific in the kind of data that's collected as we go forward in our own monitoring and in our wells, our drinking water wells, our monitoring wells. You know, want to echo what, Board Member Kapua, had said earlier. Thank you folks for you and Erwin and Ernie for holding the line that you do with respect to how it is you're testing and really being at the tip of the spear with respect to that. The public cares, the public wants to know, and the public is nervous. So it's important that we are clear in what the metrics are that we're using for this now and into the future, especially as we start to see these trend lines over time. Not unlike, you know, what Barry brings to us in his reporting. It's like the one number alone isn't going to tell us anything. It's the trend lines over time. So thank you.
Yes. All right. I mean, I'll respond and say, you know, it is great that it's we're hearing about this and learn all about all this. I wish we had more power to do something, which we don't. So I'm wondering is there a more appropriate forum that perhaps we can channel?
So originally back in 2015, the EPA, Department of Health, and the Navy and the Defense Logistics Agency signed on to a voluntary agreement called the Administrator Order and Consent, AOC. In that, they had sections in the scope of work relating to development of groundwater models, contaminant fate and transport. And Erwin, did they have remediation there? I don't think they had remediation there. It was kind of missing. But from that, the EPA and DOH are trying to build on that, modify that AOC to fit today's conditions, which actually is kind of obsolete the way it was written back in 2015 for the situation today. So they just recently, last week, they invited us to meet, be part of a roundtable discussion to talk about groundwater investigation and remediation. So we're participating in that process. And I think it's going to be very important as we move through that discussion about groundwater modeling and coming to a consensus on how the model should be built, its assumptions, how to proceed in the investigation, location of monitor wells. The area that we've been finding out for years is inconsistencies on detection levels in the testing water from these monitor wells. So yes, we want to drive that to the lowest level possible, given the current laboratory methods, because that'll tell us what is there and will give us an idea that things might be increasing or decreasing over time. If the levels being tested are too high, then everything underneath it, if there is a method available, well, it'll be like it doesn't exist. So the idea is to use the lowest possible levels for the different chemicals being tested for to give us the best understanding of what's happening in the aquifer.
And you know, I know that Governor Green convened a committee or a group of sorts.
Yeah, he made it public that he wants to create like a governor, almost like an oversight committee or task force, which he has invited the Board of Water Supply, invited me to participate on that. And in that task force or that oversight committee, that we can have these discussions, you know, about these things and bring in the attention of the governor. The governor is, we had a meeting, face-to-face meeting with the governor, and he seems very supportive. And we're going to try to work with him to do the best we can for our community.
That's great to hear, because I think that we will always continue to advocate, especially with your leadership, Ernie and Erwin. But to the extent we can bring these kinds of concerns that have been brought to us,
to
the appropriate bodies, that would be, I think,
The goal.
the goal.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right now, it should be very frank, you have the Department of Health and their position, you have the EPA and with their position, you have the Navy with their position, and not all three parties are in total synchronization here. They have slightly different perspectives on what is necessary, so the idea is to drive alignment and the access to the best information possible, what's happening in the aquifers.
If I could just offer that, I think you're right, Ernie, that there are different positions being held by the various parties that intersect this conversation, and that the difference between fully acknowledging that we're not the regulator, but we are also the only ones that have to serve up the water day in and day out and meet charter. And that's a very different thing than just having a position of thought of oh, what is best? Because the Kuleana, where the rubber hits the road with respect to actually serving clean, pure, affordable water.
It's with us.
Yeah, and so that I think just bends the Kuleana into a place that we have not been before as leadership for this organization. The people who sat in this room before have not had to take this up in this way, I think, before. And so I just want to remind us that little piece there is something that is therefore different in how it is that we have to take this up. A little bit different than pre-November 21.
I totally agree with Lehu. The role and responsibility of the Board of Water Supply of all of us as a team here is evolving. And I think it's necessary for our community, for our future. Because if we don't speak up, we don't draw the line in the sand and say, no, you're not going to go past this line, then we might not have anybody that will. And at the end of the day, future generations will suffer. So we have to do what is our evolving Kuleana in this situation.
So I think our Kuleana has always been what it is today. It's just the facts and circumstances surrounding what has happened and what has taken place is something that we have to adapt by all means. But to the extent that we can work with or advocate before other agencies that have regulatory power, which we do not, I think that would behoove us.
Yes, definitely. And right now they're listening. So they're listening. Even the Department of Defense, they're starting to listen at some of the various highest levels. And to the water utility, which is who is the water utility? It's a local function. It has no legal authority, regulatory authority. Except when it comes to landfills, though, we have regulatory authority in our rules. But I think there's hopefully that we can all stay together, including with our elected officials, and stay on top of this and work for the best of our community for our future.
Okay, great. Anything further?
I have a quick question. Kind of going back to the previous topics of talking about exploratory wells and treatment options and kind of doing the lab tests right now, which is very proactive of the Board of Water, by the way. Is there a particular, or maybe it's you, Ernie, or Oren, is it as far as a Red Hill specific? I mean, because all this is a reaction to Red Hill, right? We wouldn't necessarily be doing these things if Red Hill didn't happen, right? So, the Board of Water is being proactive in finding a potential solution in the event that's, things go the wrong way. But as far as just someone who's responsible or leading that charge, is it you, Ernie, or is there someone within the Board of Water that's specifically looking at specific Red Hill, call it risk mitigation plan?
Yeah, so Yeah, good question, John. It's because Aaron and I have been on this thing for 9 years.
Yeah.
Already, 9 years and counting. Is that, and we know this, this issue, Red Hill, will go beyond our time here, even at the board. So we're trying to work to build internal capacity to continue to succeed the effort to work for our community. And then on top of that, Red Hill is just now, also you have the looming issue, which is kind of undefined at this moment, PFAS contamination and its potential impacts on our water resources. So it is clear that we need to build that internal capacity within the organization. So we got people now working full-time on Red Hill. Specifically. And engineer, and we just recently hired someone to really work with Ray to pursue federal funding. That's also another approach that we haven't utilized as much before, is to seek funding from outside sources, Red Hill related or not, that can help supplement our budget and reduce the cost burden on our ratepayers. So we really want to capitalize on that. The FEMA funds have been helpful to purchase additional generators for backup power. We know we need backup power during hurricane events or other events. So being more self-sufficient. So we're trying to build on those opportunities.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm just asking these questions because these are directly things that we can do, right, to be proactive and within our direct authority and our actions. So it's great to hear that. So
John, one thing that we Red Hill has been staring at us for 9 years, but we also under Barry is in charge of that project, Water Resources, doing a development of a source water protection plan. So identifying other potential activities that could contaminate our water resources and map them out around the island to see as what the risks are. And it'll also help us, I think, in siting future wells. So trying to stay clear of things that are already defined as a potential contaminating activity that occurred at a different location. For example, like the military bases and their use of PFAS.
It's a huge task, yeah. I feel like, I don't know, 50 years ago, large scale contamination of water probably wasn't really a thing for the Board of Water Radios.
It actually was.
I guess so. With
agriculture was the first one. Yeah, and we're still reacting to that more going on 40 years later. Yeah.
So I think that's an excellent point because the way I see it for our agency, there are things that we can directly control and influence. For example, we can get new sources, we can set up monitoring wells, and those are within our control, subject to the limits of our resources. And there are things that are beyond our control. We don't have regulatory authority. So, I think focusing what we're doing right now is something that we can and should continue.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if there is nothing else, I'm going to move to the next item here. This is the financial statement and supplementary information with independent auditors report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Chair recognizes our auditors from Acuity. We have Mr. Don Nakamura and Mr. Matthew Oda.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and board members. So I'm Don Nakamura. I'm a partner at Acuity, and with me is Matthew Oda. He's a senior manager at Acuity. We do have a presentation as well as the actual issued audited financial statements and single audit report. So Matt will start out by walking through the financial statements and single audit report.
Yeah, we can go through the reports first and sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
So I think you should have two. There's a really thick one. This is the financial statements, and then there's a little thinner one. That's the federal compliance audit that Ernie was talking about earlier. So yeah, starting with the spiral bound one though. Shucks, it's not page numbered, but maybe about 5 pages in, there's a section called Report of Independent Auditors. And this is a report summarizing our audits of the department. I'm going to go through it quickly because we issued a clean or unmodified opinion. So generally, the less talking we do at these kind of presentations, the better. So thanks to Joe and his team, we're able to issue a clean opinion on the financial statements. At the bottom of that page, though, I did want to point out that there was a new accounting pronouncement that was effective for the department in fiscal year 2022. It was called Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 87, which I'll talk about it in a little bit more depth a little bit later, but it was something that we highlighted in our audit opinion. And then if we could jump ahead to page 16 of the financial statements, I'm just going to go through at a really high level some of the changes in the amounts in here. So please, if okay, feel free to stop me if I can answer any questions or talk about anything in more detail. So net position for BWS increased by about $30 million in fiscal year 2022, compared to an $18 million increase in 2021, mainly due to an increase in operating revenues of about $10 million, coupled with a decrease in operating expenses of a little under $17 million in 2022. Unrestricted current assets as of June 30, 2022 were about $190 million and exceeded current liabilities by about $124 million at fiscal year 2022 year end. Net capital assets increased by about $32 million in 2022, mainly due to current year construction, offset partially by depreciation expense. The net pension liability was about $107 million as of 6/30/2022, which is a decrease of about $26 million from the prior year end. The net other post-employment benefit liability was about $43 million as of June 30, 2022, which is a decrease of about $25 million. And both those liabilities are actuarially determined by a third-party actuary. Bonds payable increased by about $77 million, mainly due to the issuance of new Series 2022A bonds that were issued in the current year. And then notes payable increased by about $5 million due to new SRF loans that were obtained. And then I was planning to go through some of the highlights in the footnotes really quickly. On page 23 of the financial statements, sticking in the big report. So as I mentioned, there was a new accounting standard that was effective this year, GASB 87, that required certain leases that were previously not in the financial statements to be recognized either as a lease liability where BWS is a lessee, or a lease receivable where BWS is a lessor. There wasn't a lot of leases that the board has, so there wasn't a big impact. But just wanted to point out that this new accounting standard was effective this year. Excuse me. Jumping ahead to page 39, this is the lease footnote. So again, just highlighting that there's some additional disclosures this year related to BWS's leases. But again, it wasn't like there was a ton of leases, so there wasn't a really significant financial impact. And then the last thing I wanted to cover, because it's been the topic of a lot of your folks' conversation today, was on page 53. We do have a footnote disclosure related to Red Hill, just because it does represent an uncertainty that BWS is facing in terms of we're not sure what the financial impact is going to be, but just wanted to include a disclosure about the status as of the date when we issued the audit report, which was several months ago. But that was all that I had for the financial statements. Did you folks have any questions? If not, I was going to cover the other report, the single audit or the federal compliance audit. Oh, so that one was a little bit.
Actually, can I just-
Sure.
So on page 53, number 15, the reference to Red Hill.
Sure.
That's added here because it just adds some variability in maybe some of the liabilities that persist.
Oh, yeah.
with respect to water.
Just because one of the disclosures is any like risks or uncertainties. And I think because of, the uncertain nature of what might ultimately happen with, the cleanup and contamination, it was just something that we felt rose to that level that it should be disclosed in the footnotes.
And in the financial world, in the accounting world, like what is the potential impact? I mean, besides having to spend more dollars, like what is the potential impact of that and why would you include it?
I think basically what you said is that if it does come down the line that, there is a significant cleanup that BWS will have to incur costs for, then I think that's what we're pointing out. But we did state that at this time, it's not possible to estimate what, the exposure might be, just that there is that, that possibility.
So just in case the Navy doesn't pay up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put it
Thank
simply.
you. Thank
Put it
you.
simply.
Thank you, Board Member Sir. Yes.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you for your question. Any other questions on the financial statements? Okay. If not, I'm gonna skip to the other report, the one that says single audit of federal financial assistance program. So this is the audit that we conduct anytime, an entity expends over a certain threshold of federal funds, then they're subject to this single audit. That's kind of what Ernie was talking about when he's saying there's, compliance requirements. Oh, sorry.
Joy.
Sorry.
Well, is it just one?
I think it's in our.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Page number.
Was it? Was it posted also?
It should follow.
Is this 66? I think the last page of the financials was 65. I'm not sure. But...
Yes, 66.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Then. Is it okay if I look at it? Well, I think it might actually be separate, but it's just a.
So you only got one hard copy?
We only got the one hard copy, or you only have.
I'll go.
We don't have the smaller report.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we only have a financial audit.
Yes. Yeah, this doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's all. Okay. Thank you.
Demerit.
Okay. Do you want to go actually to your PowerPoint?
Oh, sure. Don was gonna.
While we're waiting for the.
Sure.
So this is the first page that covers our scope of services. Again, to audit the Board of Water Supply's financial statements, as well as performing the single audit of over federal awards compliance, basically.
Is it your first year doing it for us?
It is our first year of this contract, but we actually did previously perform the audit between 2010 and 2013 or 14 is when you first joined the board. I recall you had first joined the board at that time. Yes.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Amazing job, Joe. It's a short amount of time.
I know. I was gonna say that's which
Presentation.
You found it right away, but yeah, so we'll just continue. So this is the financial statement highlights that Matt was covering, and then I'll just go into the required communications right now. So as part of our audits, we are required under our professional standards, generally accepted auditing standards, to communicate certain matters to those charged with governance, in this case, the board. So we have a tabular format for these required communications. On the left is the required communications, the matter to be communicated, and on the right is our response to those requirements. I'm not going to read through all of them. So I believe folks all had a chance to scan through them. So I'll just hit the highlights for the first couple as far as our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards and the planned scope of the audit. So those were both communicated through the contract that we have executed with the board, as well as in the audit reports themselves as far as our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards. The third item, as far as significant risks of material misstatements. So we are required to identify as part of our audit planning process significant risks and relate to the financial statements. So these are not necessarily operational risks, but just risks that may come up as far as material misstatement to the financial statements that are prepared by management. So the first couple, they usually scare people who are not familiar with auditing standards as far as improper revenue recognition due to fraud and management override of controls. I mean, those are standard audit risks. There is a presumption that they exist in entities. So again, those are standard audit risks. And the third one, as far as the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on the department's operations and financial condition. Of course, in fiscal year 2022, we're still within the pandemic, coming out of it, but still having some effect, as well as improper classification of capital assets, since those are the board's most significant assets. And we were required to communicate those as part of the our required communications with the board, as well as during our planning phase. So ordinarily, it would be included in our engagement letter. In this case, we have a contract with the board, so it was included within the contract. These risks were stated, and so there were no changes as far as the risks identified during our planning. Matt mentioned while he was walking through the financial statements, the implementation of GASB statement number 87. That's the first item. And then in the second item, we have the more difficult and subjective judgments and estimates related to the financial statements. So allowance of uncollectible receivables, depreciation and useful lives of capital assets, and calculation of net pension benefits, net OPEB, and workers' compensation liabilities. So as you can see, these are related to estimates and things that were mentioned by Matt and in the previous slide as well. As far as audit adjustments, so the summaries of adjusting and reclassifying entries were attached to the management representation letter. The adjustments primarily related to properly stating capital assets for completed projects, as well as the reclassifying entries were for proper classification between cash and investments, as well as current and non-current assets and liabilities. There was also one uncorrected misstatement, which was deemed to be immaterial. So management elected not to record that. And that was also attached to the management representation letter. You folks mentioned and touched on the Navy's Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility and that issue. Let's see. And then there's no issues related to the board's ability to continue as a going concern or other material uncertainties noted during our audit. There are no disagreements with management. There are no major issues discussed with management prior to our retention. And there were no difficulties encountered in performing our audits. As far as internal control deficiencies, there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control reporting, financial reporting that were reported. We're not aware of any fraud or illegal acts. And we confirm our independence with the AICPA's professional code. And the management representation letter is available upon request. That's the end of our presentation. I'll turn it over back to Matt to quickly cover the single audit.
Thank you. So thank you, Joe, for getting this up here. So this is on the thinner report over here. This is the report that we issue. I guess the two parts of our audit, one is on the financial statements. Then the second part is compliance with compliance requirements related to BWS's expenditures of federal funds. So anytime they expend a certain level of federal expenditures, you're subject to what's called a single audit. It's like a
pause there. Kapua and Ed, we'll email you this a PDF of this, the single audit report. Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is just the results of our single audit. It's going to be brief because, as Ernie mentioned, we didn't find anything during our single audit. On the first page, this is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other related matters. So this kind of ties into our financial statement audit. We take a look at the board's, financial reporting, internal control, stuff like that. As Don mentioned, we didn't have any findings in this area. The next report is a report on compliance for the major programs that we audited as part of the single audit, as well as the schedule of expenditures and federal awards that I'll talk about a little bit later. Again, we didn't have any findings in this area either. If you jump ahead to page 7, this is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So these are the federal awards that BWS expended in fiscal year 2023. Or I'm sorry, 2022. Arranged by federal agency, and it also mentions if the funds are passed through from like DOH or any other pass-through entities. On page 9, this one is kind of a summary of the results of our single audit. So generally, you want to see all no's in that rightmost column. And as you can see, we didn't, note any of these items, findings or significant deficiencies or anything like that, which is always good. And then the final pages are going to be blank because those come into play only if we note any findings during our single audit. So good news that.
Blank.
Yes. Very good. Did you folks have any questions on single audit?
Or anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Presentation, sorry, I forgot to ask if you both had questions on presentation too.
Anybody have a question?
Thank you.
All right, okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along here, we have Mr. Joe Hooper, presenting the potential update for the quarter ending December 31st, 2022.
Good morning, Chair and entire board members. This is our second quarter report on the financial performance of the Board of Water Supply from July to December. Our actual revenues were $133.9 million, which is $4.6 million over our budgeted revenues. Our operating costs were $117.9 million, which is $3.9 million under our budgeted operating costs. And that makes our net revenue was $16 million, which was I think it's $8.6 million over our projected loss. I think actually of our budgeted. That's actually our budgeted net revenues. So the slide's a little wrong. The bottom slide should be budgeted net revenues as opposed to budgeted expenditures. But the net revenues for the first half of the year was $16 million, which is the difference between revenues and operating costs. This is a breakdown of some of the major cost drivers going into our operating costs. Personnel expenses were $21 million, which is $4.4 million under budget. Materials, services, and supplies was $43 million, which was $4.6 million under budget. Equipment was $500,000, which was $500,000 under budget. And then debt service was $17.6 million, which was pretty close to on budget. Utilities is probably the biggest variance, or one of the biggest variants we have percentage-wise. At $18.7 million, which is up $5 million from what we had budgeted, which is about a 37% increase. And I think we've all experienced that in life outside. This slide shows some of the budget breakdowns, budget variances by each individual division, and the budget office and the budget and the divisions are available if you have any questions on their specific budget variances. This slide presents the different categories as a percentage of our total operating costs. Our largest cost category is materials, services, and supplies in the lower right-hand corner, which represents about 37% of our operating costs for the first 6 months. The next largest area of category of cost is fixed costs, which is about 30% or $35 million of our total operating costs. That's followed by personnel services of 18% or $21 million. And finally, by debt service of $17 million or about 15%. And a very small sliver of equipment costs. This slide represents our operating costs in each category compared to budget. And again, you can see that the actual costs are the darker lines on the left and the budgeted costs are the blue lines on the right. Personnel budget is about 17% under budget. Personnel costs are about 17% under budget. Materials and supplies are under budget. Equipment is pretty much on budget. Debt service is pretty much on budget. And fixed charges, again, is about 18% over budget. And again, that's attributable to energy costs or electricity costs, which fall into the fixed cost category. This slide represents our operating costs on both a monthly basis and a year-to-date basis. Year-to-date, our operating costs are still under budget by about $13.9 million or 3.24%. Our monthly expenditures probably average about just under $20 million, $19.6 million a month. The large expenditures in September, which we discussed at our last meeting, is pretty much just due to timing differences of when those expenses were recognized in our accounting record. And this slide represents our revenue on both a monthly and a quarter-to-date basis, comparing our actual revenues to our budgeted revenues. Year-to-date, our budgeted revenues are about $4.6 million over budget, or 3.59%. And our budgets for the last quarter on a monthly basis are pretty close to what was budgeted. And the budgets and our revenue is averaging just over $20 million a month, or about $64 million for the final quarter. That concludes the quarterly financial presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments.
Member?
Joe, how's the AR on like single family homes since COVID? Getting better?
Yeah, yeah. The AR, we are working diligently on accounts receivable and past due accounts, and it is slightly improving. Actually, our AR overall, our write-off rate was about 0.225%, and that's not totally attributable to single family homes. Actually, we have some rather large accounts that got behind and were harder to catch up on.
I'm asking more as a sense of just like as a understanding how the community is doing more than whether or not you're really capturing those dollars and not writing them off, but just curious as to how it feels to the community is doing post-COVID.
Well, I think it probably is still a struggle for some families, but yes. Because a lot of things have hit at the same time. The federal subsidies have ended, and I think it's those families that are most susceptible to economic chaos are probably experiencing it the most.
Yeah, to that discussion, did a lot of families make use of that rent utility relief fund that the city was putting out?
I don't, not enough families made use of it, I guess, or maybe as many as could make use of it. And I don't have that statistic right in front of me. I think we did receive over $1 million in rent, through those rent relief, utility relief programs. And those are still ongoing.
And there's also a new state program with the Department of Human Services at the state. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
On the utilities, what's the forecast moving forward? Utilities expenses.
Oh,
Are they gonna continue?
Trend upward.
I think I will turn it over to our budget office. I know that I don't want to speak for them. I think they are, I'm expected to increase.
So like you saw in the slides, we overspent by almost 5 million, mostly attributable to electricity. We saw,
Ray can go to the
oh,
podium.
sure. We saw through December kind of maybe a little bit of normalizing. It like really spiked. It we're just looking at the kilowatt per hour charges. The cents per kilowatt charges, I guess, on our bills, because we use a lot during the summer, right? So you're catching in that first half of the year some of the highest electricity usage. So that's another driver for how much we spent. We're hitting winter, so there's a lot less usage now, and also we're seeing the cents per kilowatt hour coming down ever so slightly, but in still forecasting probably being in the range of $10 million over budget by the end of the year. Hopefully not that bad, but to be conservative, that's what I'm looking at, and currently kind of trying to find out how I'm going to make up for that elsewhere in the budget. But yeah, hopefully we can make it to the end of the year.
So usage is steady, but it's the kilowatts per hour, the rate that's
the price.
The cost, yeah. So the unit price for electricity has just skyrocketed. We saw it like just shoot up in the summer. And then around the time they closed AES, it went even higher. So we've just been paying, I guess HECO has a, I don't know what you call this, like a demand use, or like it's a pass-through. Yeah, pass-through recovery feature. So if they're paying more for fuel, they pass that on to their customers. So we saw that come straight through on the bills in the summer, and then has not really tapered off. I don't think it's climbing at the exponential climb that we saw from September to December. But as far as, is it leveling off? Is it dropping? If we just assume kind of the same pattern, we'll overspend by 10 million in electricity.
okay. Okay, because I do know, we came out positive on the costs. But that's because personnel is under budget, because we've got
Oh, you mean-
open position.
Yes.
Can you bring it up again?
And
That are difficult to fill, so.
Right.
So it sort of balances out.
Yeah, and the difficulty is a lot of what you're seeing in like the material supplies and services and equipment are just matters of timing. So the personnel, like what we lapsed, yes, those are positions that were not filled in the first half of the year. Maybe that as long as we continue to deal with the normal attrition, difficulty to fill, we'll probably have some salary savings. Will I have $10 million though? That's the big question right now. Material supplies and services, like that lapse you see there, or not lapse, but the difference, it's just timing. These contracts are still expected to come through. Same with equipment, and then debt service is like right on target. So yeah, it's really a balancing of us, or for us right now, on what can we defer without, cutting our services, or are we going to need to increase the appropriation? So we're looking very closely. I think HECO's doing another forecast meeting for its stakeholders. I believe it's this week, right?
Yeah, they're working to let us know what to expect, what they see as the future looks like. And I think it still looks at high oil prices for a while before it starts again.
Is fuel wrapped up into the utilities?
No, it's separate. That's in like the material supplies and services, and it would be in the automotive division.
Yeah.
That is also high, but our fuel budget is much, I guess it's smaller. Like electricity is about 10% of the overall $200 million operating budget. Fuel is a few $1 million a year. So it's just smaller. It's buried in automotive services, and that is also going over right now too.
So The other aspect too is if people conserve water, that means less water has to be pumped, which means lower electricity costs. So conservation can benefit. It does mean to less revenue coming.
Yes.
But, you know, we want to encourage customers which, you know, are also feeling the pinch of higher electricity bills to conserve water.
Yeah, thank you. I was about to ask that. For material supplies and services, is it because we're doing less or is it just the timing? But you mentioned it's the
Yeah.
timing, so that's
Mostly timing. My procurement office is furiously busy right now trying to get out all the contracts in the second half of the year, which usually tends to be the cadence at which this happens, right? The first 2 quarters are slow, it really picks up in the third, and then the fourth is tons of contracts, tons of encumbrances. So we're seeing that again.
And it's okay if the personnel cost ends up to be closer to budget than otherwise, because then that means we.
Yes, and
That's actually.
That's the goal.
That's the objective. But we're also trying to be sensitive that our customers are also struggling to pay their utility bills. So we could have passed through and tried to recover after the fact, and we decided that we're gonna try to just tighten our belts and make this work.
So we have that similar rate feature, a power cost adjustment factor that we could.
We have the ability to.
But ours is retroactive, it's after the fact.
Oh, no, yeah.
It looks bad.
Is your overages in water quality and communications office, resources, they're all kind of tied to the red.
We're kind of Red Hill
Yes.
related costs that we've had to incur because of that.
Red Hill and timing, like if water quality goes, if they're not unbudgeted, it's just a matter of like when we encumbered on some of those things. We brought it forward, encumbered earlier in the year. Communications as well, a lot of the strategic communications planning and media stuff was just not unbudgeted, it's just a timing thing, we did things earlier.
Earned it earlier than you. Yep.
Okay, very good, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.
All right, moving on, unless there's nothing further on that item, is item number 4. This is the capital improvement program quarterly update. Chair recognizes Ms. Jadine Rest.
Afternoon, Chair Andaya and board members. I'm Jadine Arasaki, the acting program administrator for Capital Projects Division. This is the quarterly report on the capital improvement program for all divisions for the quarter ending December 31st, 2022. As you can see, in the second quarter of this fiscal year, 3 contracts were awarded totaling just over $595,000. We had 13 completion contracts reported. And as you can see, the details are shown on that sheet there. The details are on the next slide, specifically identifying the projects that associate with the awards as well as the completions. The next slide is a graph that we updated showing what's happening in this current fiscal year. For this second quarter, we're still roughly at 1%, which is pretty similar to previous fiscal years historically, except for fiscal year 20. But generally, as Raylene had mentioned earlier, we're going to start in this third quarter, you're going to see a lot more, as well as the fourth quarter as well. We already have projects that have been advertised. We have recommendations for awards that are pending, and we also have bid openings this week.
JD, that includes some of the pipeline jobs that we didn't get out last week.
Yeah, so 5 of the pipeline jobs that we deferred to this fiscal year have been advertised already. The last 2 are opening this week. And that's it for my presentation. If you have any questions.
Members?
I have a quick question. The Pensacola project, is it here or this year?
That is the Kalawahini pipeline project?
Yeah.
That's in construction.
So it won't show up in these numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, next one.
No, it was a previous report, pipeline job.
Because it was already awarded.
Yes.
Yeah.
So previous fiscal year.
So it's under construction right now.
Oh, okay.
Any challenges to awarding any contracts and any increase in costs that the contractors have been voicing or expressing?
We haven't seen that in the latest bids. We did have one bid where we only had one contractor. But it could just be an anomaly because it was one of our exploratory well projects. And it could be the challenges with just contractors in general because of the contractors working for the Navy and the Red Hill.
A lot of drilling going on.
Yeah. But as far as the pipeline, it's hard. We were low on a couple and then almost even and a little high. So it's really hard to kind of gauge what's going on.
So did you answer the question about the costs? Do you see any fluctuating up of costs?
Right, so we in terms of the bids,
Yeah.
we've seen some low and we've seen some pretty close and then some a little high. So we're not really sure what's happening.
Oh, okay, so it's all over the place now.
Kind of.
It's not trending.
It's not necessarily trending up.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good news, I guess.
it's confusing.
We are seeing longer lead times for materials or equipment coming in. And I think that's common
Consistent with
everywhere.
ours. Yeah, exactly.
You folks do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know there was an increase in concrete costs, but I guess that's not very impactful to your guys' projects.
We don't use as much concrete, I think, as other, say, vertical construction or bridges or
Yeah, got it.
or for you, you're seeing concrete.
Yeah, so DDC's kind of put out that 20 to 30% increase in concrete costs.
Changing
industry-wide.
from Portland cement to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, hopefully, we'll see how it impacts our
Yeah,
projects.
yeah.
So there's a shortage last year, end of last year.
I think it was just the supply chain, I think it was.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it was a shortage arriving here.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it was
Line cement.
a shipping issue.
Shipping issue.
Yeah, but they're all okay right now. Yeah, it's resolved.
Yeah, we asked the construction community to, if the impact on the Navy's dry dock work is going to much concrete costs, but they'll just adjust.
Yeah, so just adjust.
So I was gonna, okay, so how are we dealing with supply chain issues? Are we making any adjustments?
Yes, we are in the newer projects where we have the option, the contractor for specialty materials to do some advanced ordering and to get paid on that.
Also, a couple, I think this was in August of 2022, there was another metric that we started, which I think is useful. It's not a perfect metric, but it was called the awarded price per linear square foot. And if we could continue that.
Okay.
And we can monitor the trends and that would be good.
On unit price per square.
Yeah,
Linear foot.
Yeah, I think Jason had.
That graph.
Yeah, put it together.
We'll bring that back in the report. Thank you.
Members, anything else?
What was that size of the pipe in linear foot was just the laying of it, or was it, I'm trying to remember what it was on.
So I believe,
Costs divided.
yeah, like basically, are we getting bang for a buck, right? So
Cost per linear foot.
cost per.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see how that was.
It's trending, yeah.
We had one in, I think this was August 2022.
Yeah.
So maybe you need more data to get.
Yeah, I remember that, but not the specific.
Yeah, it looks like.
Yeah.
Let's check a little bit.
Okay.
Very good, very good, very good.
Anything else? Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Thanks, JD.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
All right, moving on, we have 5 items for information, status update of groundwater levels at all index stations for December 2022 and January 2023. We had tabled this last meeting. Chair recognizes Mr. Barry Muscal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Yeah, so the report is for January and February. We had 5 aquifer index stations in low groundwater. Abaqui, Pearl City, Kalonui, and Wailua were in caution, and Pulu was still in alert. The production for December was about 130 million gallons per day. January went up to 131. Expect with the rains we had this month, it should drop. The rainfall index though in December was 64% of normal with the 5-month average at 105. So getting back to normal rainfall, which is a good sign. We're seeing the national weather forecast of above normal rainfall through April. So we'll hope it continues over the next couple of months. And the head levels for the index wells were recovering and slightly increasing because of the rainfall and the lower amount of pumpage. So all in all, looks pretty good for the winter. So that's my report, and available for any questions.
Members, any questions? Thank you for the report. All right, next, final item for information, item number 6 is our water main repair report for December 22nd. Again, playing catch up due to the last meeting. And January 2023. Chair recognizes Mr. Jason Nikai.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Board members. I'm here to give the water main break report for January and February, or December and January, sorry. Okay, so in December, we had 22 breaks, and in January, we had 23 breaks. Those are both below our average numbers. We have 215 breaks fiscal year to date, and that is kind of trending below previous years. And next slide. One more back. Yeah, okay. These are the breaks that happened in December. We had 1 break on the 16-inch, the rest were small diameter. Next slide. And in January, all the breaks were on smaller diameter pipe. Next slide. This is our leak detection report. In December, our leak detection team investigated 16 points of interest, and in January, 19 points of interest, for a total of 146 to date. They are kind of running lower than usual because we had new staff start, and they are training up that staff, and they're also doing more investigations that require more time. But they were still able to find 15 leaks in December and 11 in January, bringing us to a total of 259. Next slide, please. Okay, this is kind of like an overview of our satellite leak detection program to date.
Yeah, and I noticed this is a new kind of metric that you've incorporated.
Oh, just just kind of like a snapshot of where we are right now.
This is the first time we've seen.
Yeah. So this is what our crews see. So you can zoom into the map, but I just showed the overall island. Those kind of orangey dots are where we have found leaks. So we have found leaks all over the island. And the colored circles would represent points of interest where we haven't gotten to yet. So the majority of the points of interest we have yet to investigate are on the leeward coast. So that's where crews are focusing on next. In the top left, you see kind of the points of interest by status. So the red indicates points of interest where we found leaks at. The green is where we haven't found leaks at, and the purple is points of interest where no leaks were found. So the majority or over half the time we find a leak when we go out and do an investigation.
So just to add what Jason shared, because of Red Hill too, the focus of like on the Honolulu water system from Halawa all the way up to Hawaii Kai, and also the Aya Halawa system. So they've done good work also working with the Department of Parks and Recreation, finding some leaks in Ala Moana Beach Park, and trying to work also with the Honolulu Zoo for enterprise services.
And the bottom left, you'll see we've investigated pretty much 3/4 of the points of interest identified by the satellites. We're currently working on a contract to extend that contract and get a new snapshot of potential leaks. And if you scroll down a little bit more, so as of, I think, February 22nd, we found 1,579 leaks using our satellite. And of those 1,579, 46 of them have been on mains. So the main ones are important because those are the ones that can cause catastrophic main breaks, blowouts, and do property damage.
And traffic.
And traffic, yes.
Yeah, definitely traffic, especially on state highways.
Yeah. Oopsies.
What is
Sorry.
what is the orange one?
Coupling, so those are within the meter box. The pipes connected to it, yeah. So those are the ones that the leak detection team can just go and tighten themselves. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
And Jason, you know how your leaks found tally, it looks, lower compared to last year.
Yes.
What is that indicative of? Is that because you're not out there tracing leaks or what?
Some reasons are because we have new staff, so we're training them, so less resources are going to the satellite detection right now. And also our data is kind of old, which is why we're kind of going with a new contract to get more data to investigate.
Who does the tech for that?
It's a company called Astera. So they pretty much have like a patent on it, and they're pretty much the only ones right now in the industry that does satellite leak.
They do it all over the country.
They are out of Israel, so they do anywhere in the world. As long as a satellite can pass over that location, they can perform that service.
And they're basically finding areas of chlorinated water. And you go maybe into a meter.
Yes, about 1 to 2 meters below surface.
And it's about 50% accurate for the points of interest.
Yeah, we're kind of above normal in their accuracy.
Chinese spy balloons.
Gives you a general idea.
And the satellite is not like a balloon.
No, these are in space. But it is amazing. When we first heard about this many years ago at a AWWA conference, so we thought, wow, this is too good to be true.
High tech, yeah.
But it's amazing what we do. And Jason and his team have really proven it out.
Cool.
Very good.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Members, any questions? Any further questions? If not, thank you very much for the report.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, that brings us to the end of our regular agenda. If I could have we do have a quick executive session. If I can get a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Aye. Oh.
All right,
You can, hey, you can stay with us. Stay where you go.
meeting adjourned.